So we've got Benjamin. Benjamin, you came on our radar a couple of weeks ago because you did a post on LinkedIn about a couple of services or whatever. I don't want to misquote you, and I've got a memory like a sieve, so I apologise. But it's one of those posts where I'm just like, well done to you, mate. Absolutely well done. And it's just like, let's put you into video because there's just you're one of those people where I've been running MANUPs for quite some time now, and sometimes like you read posts and you're like, there's more to this than meets the eye.
Yeah. Oh God, there's an 8-part series building up somewhere.
We've got 20
Um,
minutes.
yeah, absolutely. I'll try and shorten it as much as I can. No, the post was strictly because I'd finally gotten to a point where I've been an active sufferer with multiple different say mental illnesses, if you like. Mainly depression and anxiety is probably my two biggest, and these are things that have stemmed from a very early age. And over recent months, I've put a lot of thought into it, and I've seen a lot of people that are avid sufferers. And the issue is that I feel like less and less people are doing more and more about it. There's this overall stigma that is just surrounding the whole thing in terms of people just think it's either made up, or they look at it as oh, that's a completely different person, or that's an ill person, stay away from them. And to be too honest, it's disgusting, isn't it? We don't really want to be looking like that. But the point of the post, and I've sort of built up a network for myself over that in terms of work, friends, and obviously previous job roles as well. That might not be relevant to everybody, but I felt like LinkedIn is definitely a good place to start. I do want to try and do more, and I do want to try and become a bit more of a symbol to represent men's mental health, and try and help and aid people as much as I possibly can. But the reason it's come about is I've got involved with a couple of brands and companies, especially one to do with football, which is sort of my biggest outlet, if you like. In terms of the fact that if I'm having a really bad day, or if I'm having one of my off days, football's always a thing that that gets me back on track. Just to be around another group of guys that all sort of have different issues. Some of them completely different backgrounds as well. It's just good to have a conversation, get out, get a bit of exercise, because you do honestly feel the benefits from it. And I know that's not going to be the same for everybody, but for me, it's been about just getting out, enjoying myself, getting back out in the exercise world, and yeah, just trying to get myself back on a level playing field again. Really, it's my escape from reality, if that kind of makes sense. If
No, well,
I'm sort of wording that right.
no, it does, and that's something we massively promote. With Man Up. Like me, I do wild camping. One of the trustees, he's a champion husky racer. We've got somebody who likes to hit other people with axes. He does all of that reincarnation, not reincarnation, with the Vikings and all of
Yeah.
reenactments. That's the word I'm looking for. Do you get what I mean? It is. I think when it comes down to mental health, just my personal opinion, and I'd like to back it up. I've had so many conversations by Man Up. It's in the hundreds now, these conversations. We'll put it this way, I'm innocent and I've started to forget the people I've done videos with. I know that sounds really bad, but I'm just going to be honest. Plus, I've hit my head a lot. But anyway, but the thing is it's fine. It's fine saying things like, I don't know, like go and speak to your doctor, go and do this, go and do that. But actually, sometimes you can't beat just up to a point, getting off your backside. I know it's hard, getting off your backside and do something that you enjoy, even if that just turns off your brain. Like I do wild camping. I like to race my motorbikes around racing tracks because I can't think of anything else, and it kind of clears that head clutter.
Yes, no, I mean you're absolutely right. I mean you touched on a point there. When people do say, and the thing is, it's very naive, and it's very easy for people to turn around and go say, oh, we'll go see a doctor, or go and do this or go and do that. And generally speaking, that comes from a person that's not necessarily experienced something firsthand, or might not necessarily know that they've experienced it. I think there are a lot of people out there that might suffer who either don't want to admit it, or don't actively know that they are.
Yeah.
But the issue with that, and something that I've thought about a lot recently, is that I think that the problem and the way things are going, and because even though there are so many people like yourselves, and there are other charities and brands out there that are also trying to help and bring awareness to this, the rate of men's suicide is getting absolutely ridiculous. I think it's in its 80s per week now, which is absolutely mind blowing. And my thought process behind it is that we need to get people first to realize that there might actually be something going on, you know, just try and admit it to themselves. And like you say, you know, try and tackle their problems head on and try and understand exactly what it is that, you know, that's causing it, and, you know, exactly how they're feeling, because then they're going to be able to sort of try and, you know, start dealing with it. And the issue is, and take, for example, you know, if it's somebody that, you know, takes things quite to heart, and, you know, that does emotionally damage them, and, you know, say it's a social media star, and, you know, they read all their comments on videos that are saying, oh, you're this, you're that, you know, you're ugly, whatever it might be. Those things are always going to happen. You know, you're never ever going to get away from that. It's the same reason that we have laws, and, you know, we make things illegal, because they're always going to happen. The point is that we're trying to stop it.
Yeah, no.
So, you know, it's a very, very touchy subject for, you know, for when if somebody said to me now, and now that I have a bit more understanding about how I feel, and sort of a bit more about other people's, if someone said to me now, go and see a doctor, I'd probably lose my mind. I'd be so annoyed. I'd be really, really unhappy with that, because that's just a very, very naive and a very, very lazy comment to make from somebody that might not necessarily just understand, or, like I said, not necessarily suffer themselves. So,
well, I think and this is what frustrates me about the mental health game. Like, it's a big industry. Sadly, it is a big industry. I can't wait for the day where I have to sit down with the trustees and say, do you know what? There's no need anymore. I can't wait to shut it down, because there's no need. I'm sure, sadly, I don't think it'll happen in my lifetime, but whatever. But I think we from what I've seen, LinkedIn's the worst, actually, in my personal opinion. When we talk about mental health, we automatically presume it's mental illness. And we seem to have skipped this world of, like, looking after your mental health, the same as you look after your heart, your blood pressure, and all of that, your general fitness. But if we all took the time to just speak to the people around us about having a crap day, or just something's bugging us, just offload that. It doesn't need to be absolutely everything going, my life history until since I was 8 years old. Just right now, some, I don't know. Oh, that guy Ben, he said something. It's really pissing me off. Rather than letting that eat me inside, tell the missus about it and just say, what, he said something about this and it's really bugged me. Rather than letting it, blokes are a nightmare for, aren't we? We can let it fester, and then something else happens. Then that festers, and then if that's not spoken about, just through my personal opinion, if that's not spoken about, that then turns into mental health problems, and then it turns into mental illness.
Yeah, and that you know, that's a very, very important point. As said, you know, we've already had a brief chat, and I said my story goes back quite a long way, but rightly so, as you've just said, you know, there are things that happen with me, you know, on a daily basis. And like I said, it could be just a matter of, you know, something's happened at work, or somebody said something. You know, I'm very, very, this is awful to say, but I'm very, very in touch with my emotions. You know, I do take things quite to heart. I know it's hard to say with bleached blonde hair, but I'm sort of opening myself for it, aren't I? But you know, I do take things quite seriously. And if someone does insult me or says something that's quite personal, it's something that, you know, it does irritate me quite a bit.
So that surprised me, and this is where we're in that dangerous. You saying that surprised me, because you seem quite a confident chap.
It depends. It's very, very dependent. There are certain aspects of myself that I'm very, very confident about, but I said it's got to a point now where, you know, I've gone through sort of seeking help. I've gone down many routes, and I've tried many different things in order to try and get myself in a headspace where it, you know, I'm not saying 110%, but, and definitely not cured, but more to the point where if I've had a bad day, or if I'm experiencing something, whatever it might be, I've just learned a lot better to deal with that. And it's very, very cliche to say, isn't it? But people like that do hide behind the sort of smiles and sort of behind the laughs. And I'm one that's, you know, I'm guilty of it every single day, you know. But the problem is with that, you know, if you imagine that somebody that suffered just having a bad day, or did have depression, you know, and was suffering quite badly, if they walked into the office 5 days a week, 9 till 5, with a face like a slapped ass, it's not going to look good, is it? You know, that tends to be why people do just hide behind the smile, because it's easier for them to do that, because they might not necessarily want the attention. You know, they don't want to draw attention to themselves. But yeah, believe me, it's easy for me to put on a smile and sit here and laugh with you as well. But then I could get on this call and someone could say something and it'd upset me straight away. So
yeah,
it's it's very, very dependent on sort of the day that I'm having. You know, if I'm having a really, really bad day, it's very, very difficult for me to try and sit here and be like, oh yeah, you know, everything's absolutely fine. Some days I do just want to walk around out the street with a big sign saying, yeah, I am broken above my head. So it's yeah, it's swings and roundabouts.
So how do you keep your? Because you said something. I think your ethos, if that's the right word, is it's
Mhm.
kind of aligned with mine. So, because with me, I've been quite vocal for. I'm high functioning depressive.
Mhm.
My anxiety that I'm a high functioning depressive, and then I'm also classed as high functioning borderline personality disorder. So
Mhm.
BPD. Don't I'm not a
Yeah.
serial killer or anything like that. So that's a thing. But I think with that stuff, I can pretty much live with. I
Mhm.
have to live with it rather than suffer from.
Mhm.
Okay, the anxiety stuff, that's the one I really don't like. But I think I was going in a weird way, so I apologise. It
That's
sounds
all
like
right.
you've accepted that you're probably gonna have whatever mental health problem for the rest of your life. So your
Yep.
decision is to live with rather than suffer from.
Yeah, and the you know, I think it's a thing that we sort of we touch base on, and I think people are almost they don't want to admit that to themselves, because they might have to turn around and go, oh, do you know what? Actually, like you said, I am going to have to live with that for the next 50 or 40 years or whatever it might be. And I think that scares a lot of people, and rightly so. You know, it
Yeah,
should do. You know, no one wants to sit back and go, oh, okay, well, I'm going to have to worry about getting on a plane, or I'm going to have to worry about driving my car down the road because I might potentially get in a crash, or whatever it might be. Um, and you know, it scares me. You know, I don't necessarily like the fact that I might have to deal with these things. You know, I'm a petrified flyer. I hate flying, but I have to fly for work. And if I want to go on holiday somewhere nice, I've got to do it.
yeah.
And I said, it's for me, it's just realizing that and coming to terms with it in a healthy manner, and sort of trying to put it into my own head and be like, right, okay, that's fine. If I am getting on a flight, I am going to be absolutely bricking it from start to finish. However, I've got to think of the end result. You know, whether that's me sitting on a beach and it's 40 degrees and I've got a pina colada in my hand, or whatever that might be. Certain things like that. You know, I'm having to deal with certain aspects of different anxieties, let's say, for the sake of this conversation, in different ways, because otherwise it will just eat at me every single day. And you know, there's been points of my life where I've thought, I'm petrified of doing that, or I'm worried about doing this, and now I really, really don't want to do it, and I've pulled out of certain things, and I've missed out because of it, and that's just, it's not fair on me, it's not fair on others, you know, that might be looking forward to seeing me, you know, and that's when I started realizing there are certain points where I'm like, I'm going to miss out on, you know, a big portion of my life if I'm afraid to do these things. And ultimately as well, you know, I don't have I don't have children at the moment, that I know of, but you know, there's a good chance that there's going to be kids that I'm going to produce that are going to have parts of my personality as well. And I'm not going to say that they're necessarily going to be born with these particular personality traits, but there's a good chance that they might pick up on it, you know, and I've got to be very, very careful about how I sort of introduce them into sort of my world as well. And like, right, I don't really want to pass this on to you, but at the same time, you know, I'm not going to always be around when these things happen to you. So I want you to be able to deal with it in the right way. It's a bit of a minefield, isn't it?
Yeah, no, it
There's
is.
no
Yeah.
sort of right or wrong answer.
So how do you keep yourself tip top? Probably the wrong expression, but hopefully you know what I mean. How do you? No, I don't know. Say for example, you some things I can relate to through my own eyes.
Mhm.
I've been invited to parties and stuff like that. I'm like,
Mhm.
yeah, that's it. I haven't seen these people in years, and like
Mhm.
literally, yeah, I'll see you in an hour. Don't get in the car.
Yeah.
And so how do you get yourself? How do you get yourself to get in that car? Because I still cock up now, mate. I've got better. How do
Mm.
you how does Benjamin kick yourself up the
It's
arse?
it's strange. So it's taken a few years, but my friendship circle is extremely small. The people I sort of associate with are sensible people now. You know, they're not like the people I used to be involved with throughout my sort of my teens, if you like. And
Someone's got a
the
shady past.
yeah, well, yeah, yeah, absolutely, yeah. We've
Yeah,
we've all done things we're not proud of, that's for sure. Um, but no, so there are two people in particular that I sort of lean on quite a bit for
yeah.
different things, and one of them is very, very, very high energy, you know, and he's the sort of person. I'm not going to repeat what he would say, but he would put it in a sense like, just, you know, just I can't quite say it because we're on call, but he'd put it in a way, and he'd put it quite almost rudely and bluntly, and it'd be me thinking to myself, yeah, do you know, I'm just overthinking this, you know, just get over it, just go. And the thing is, when I'm in that mindset, I'm like, I know I'm going to enjoy my night. I know I'm going to have a really, really good night. I know I'm going to have a couple of drinks. You know, I'm going to have a laugh. It'll be things that we can talk about tomorrow. It's just trying to slowly ease myself into the mindset, right? Like, look, you know, something could happen tonight that's going to stick with me and resonate with me for the rest of my life. Like, I might miss something that could be really, really funny or really, really important. And I hate the thought of missing out on anything. So that's sort of my,
sorry, that's a good way of doing it. Actually. I don't think I've heard anyone say that. I like that.
yeah, because the thing is, I remember when I first turned 18, I used to go out clubbing. Some of the things that I've seen and been involved with, and you know, just even to this day, just make me laugh and just sit there, even when I think about it on the sofa, or even when I get together with my best mate and we talk about some of the things that we used to get up to, or some of the things that we used to see walking home. Just, oh god, you just find it so funny. You know, you just sit there and just giggling about it, and then you just fall into a conversation about all the stupid stuff that you used to get up to when you were younger, or when you used to have a drink. And yeah, and the same now. You know, I'm so worried that something's going to happen, and I'd hate if someone called me and go, oh, you're not going to believe what happened last night, and I'm going to go, great. No, but
Yeah,
please tell me so I can feel like I've missed out on it anyway. I'd hate to have that. I'd hate to be the person on the other end of that call going, oh, I really, really wish I went now. You know, it's awful.
yeah. That's a good way of doing it. Generally, I don't think anyone's put it like that. But I think that's why MANUP works. Like MANUP, we don't ever give advice. We just let the other people do the talking. Because the idea, if someone's watching this and they're just like, bloody hell, that's me, they can relate to it.
Yeah, and that's a bit. You know, I've gone through different things, through things in my life. You know, 2014, I had quite a severe accident on my leg, and broke it fairly well. First break that I'd ever had as well. So, you know, if you do it, you're gonna have to do it properly. And you know, for the first 9 to 11 months, you know, I couldn't move, couldn't walk, couldn't do anything. Had 2 more surgeries after that, and the amount that I missed out on in that space of 12 months was just absolutely ridiculous. You know, I was sort of, you know, early 20s, if you like, and that slowly started making me realize. That's also when sort of the whole mental health sort of became a bit more apparent to me, and when I started taking it a bit more seriously, because I was bedbound for a lot of it and couldn't do a lot.
Sorry, do you think that triggered?
Right.
Do you think that triggered a lot of mental health, like hidden illness?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, you know, I went down a route of professional help and legal help with this as well, as it was something that happened at work. And there were people that I spoke to about certain things that I was sort of experiencing and feeling afterwards, which hadn't happened. Night terrors being one of them, which was absolutely ridiculous and crazy, the strangest things that I've ever experienced. And unfortunately for a particular partner that I had in the past, of just me waking up screaming in the middle of the night for no absolute reason at all, and then just falling back asleep. Yeah, that definitely triggered a lot of things for me. And it also helped me realize exactly who was around and who the people were that I could definitely lean on and speak to when sort of things were getting tough for me, because I was in a very, very dark space. And the headspace wasn't good. And if I'm honest, I was very, very rude, and I was brutally honest, and I was quite horrible to people. And the problem with that, it was all stemming from, you know, things that were going on inside my head, and it just became a very, very dark space. And the way that I was projecting it onto others was awful. You know, it was very, very negative. And I'm honest, if I'm honest, I don't regret it, because in a way it sort of made me realize what people would put up with, you know, the amount of grief that I actually did give them in order to, you know, sort of still be there for me and still want to talk to me and try and help me out with particular things that I was going through at the time. It's something that I still think about now, and it definitely generated quite a lot, which I still take up to present day. Yeah. You know, well, especially with the whole football aspect. You know, I was actually told that I wasn't going to be able to play again, which was obviously absolutely, you know, dreadful news, and something that I didn't want to hear. You know, when I was sort of essentially in the prime of my life, and I was supposed to be playing quite a bit. Yeah, it definitely touched on some things that I hadn't, you know, necessarily thought about in any sort of detail. But unfortunately, I had quite a bit of time to do that. So, but again, it's something that I've slowly sort of took took each day and sort of looked at everything individually, one by one, rather than just trying to think about, right, how do I deal with this? How do I deal with that? How do I deal with that? Because if you're a chronic overthinker like I am as well, you just put yourself in a mess and you don't get yourself anywhere. You know, as I've said earlier and a few times in this call, it's about how I've dealt with individual, you know, aspects of, you know, sort of my mental health. I try and tackle it one day at a time and one thing at a time. Otherwise, it just doesn't work. You know, it doesn't matter who you are. You know, and it just goes to show, you know, with your involvement with Keith Flint and especially with other, you know, high profile celebrities. If you look at Chester Bennington and Robin Williams, you know, these are all people that have the absolute world at, you know, at their fingertips, and these are people that all, you know, became susceptible to mental health in quite a drastic way, to the point where they've got, you know, they've gotten to such a dark headspace where obviously they've taken their own lives, which is dreadful. So unfortunately, nobody's safe from it, and it, you know, and it can come at any particular time.
Well, I think that's the thing, isn't it? I think we just all need to just be a bit more savvy about how we speak to other people, especially with blokes. Like we don't need to fix people.
No, not at all. And it's a difficult conversation to have with anybody. And as I said, especially if people don't necessarily know that they are an avid sufferer, or, you know, haven't actually experienced it themselves, you know, in a deeper sense, because obviously everybody's going to experience anxiety at some point, or, you know, everyone's going to have a really, really crap day. But obviously when you sort of dive deep and you realize that this is, you know, it's becoming a bit of a pattern to yourself, that's when obviously the conversations start coming out and people start realizing a bit more.
Yeah.
Especially with people that I've spoken to, you know, like you said, you know, I do come across in a particular way, and when I do talk to people about certain aspects of my past, you know, they'd never have expected it, or never sort of gone, oh yeah, I can see that. It just doesn't happen.
Wow.
Unfortunately.
Yeah, because you know, someone I've been saying this more. Someone said to me, "It's like, oh, can you describe anxiety?" And I was like, "Well, anxiety, first of all, is anxiety. Some parts of anxiety is it's not mental health at what is mental. It's not mental illness or mental problem. It's called being a human. When that controls your life, that's when you've got a problem. Hence why I have to take amitriptyline and a few bits and bobs out, just to rein it in a little bit, to make me a bit more human again."
And
no,
sorry, go on.
there's one thing, because when I was asked to describe, I've never been anxious in my life. I'm like, that you're talking out your ass. And then one of my examples, I seem to be saying this more. You remember when COVID was really bad and everyone was like, it felt like 2 months where actually generally everyone was petrified, weren't they?
Yeah. No one wanted to go to the supermarket.
No, exactly that. But you know, I don't know if when you went to the supermarket and you just all masked up and gloved up and all this kind of stuff, and you get that little old lady or that person who's like reading all of the things on the shelves, being really annoying. Like normally, you just go and grab it. But during COVID, we were like, oh, I can't go near that person because they could kill me.
Yeah, I'll take the tin from the back of the shelf, please. Yeah,
no, exactly that.
Trying to not follow the people around the fruit aisle and watching them touch all the fruit, and you're like, oh, no.
Yeah, no, exactly that. But how I think how I've sort of wording it is just like, well, that bit of feeling there is you could argue that's illogical anxiety. There's going to be some COVID now. It's not illogical, but whatever, fuck off. But do you get what I mean? But that's
and this sort of touched on a point that I've spoken to, and even with yourself, you know, this is when I think it's important for people to understand the difference and sort of understand and try and realize when there might potentially be an issue, because obviously it's not always going to relate to that. And you know, when, like you just said, everyone's going to experience something at some point, regardless of what it is. You know, might be an issue with, you know, remortgaging the house, or, you know, something's happened at work that could cost a lot of money, whatever it is, you know. And this is just me just speedballing, but it's when the little things start to add up, and then it starts to become a pattern. Like you said, it starts, you know, taking a bit of a toll on your life, or you find yourself thinking about it more, or after you've had a really, really bad day, someone might go home and they go, oh, do you know what, I really, really fancy a beer. Before you know it, it's 7 o'clock and they're 5, 6 beers in. You think, that's when you have to sort of go, right, okay, something's not quite right here.
and drowning the sorrow, so to speak, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly. And you know, for a lot of people, they don't realize that's happening. And, you know, especially if you've got people that I don't want to say that are blindsided by it around you, that people might not just realize, or that are scared to say it. You know, some people don't want to turn around and go, oh, look, you know, Daniel, you've had 6 beers and you've only been in the house an hour and a half. You know, do you want to slow down a bit? they might be afraid to say that because they maybe don't want to trigger something in that person. Just
Exactly. Yeah.
and this is why obviously we're trying to bring exposure to it, because we want to try and allow people to reach out and try and get people to sort of sit back and realize and sort of go, oh yeah, do you know what, actually maybe something's not quite right. Maybe there's not a severe problem, but maybe this could be a route to something that could happen later on. And the thing is, you don't realize until years and years and years later. I mean, I won't go into detail, but there are things that happened within my childhood that I've taken into my adult life now. And once I'd spoken to somebody, I've sought professional help on this. They helped me realize that there is a link between the two, and something that happened when I was 13 years of age has come into play when I'm about 26. And I've been laying there and I've gone, you know what, you're absolutely right. That's why I can't do this, because of that. That's why I'm sort of struggling to do it. And people don't actually realize that does actually happen. That is a real thing. Same with people that eat crap food 7 days a week. It's gonna catch up with you at some point. You can be as naive as you like for the next 2 years, but 6 years down the line, you could really be paying for it.
What do you know what? So someone said to me the other day, actually, I thought it was genius. Christmas time.
Yeah.
When we get into that period of like, what day is it?
Mm-hmm.
And all of this kind of stuff. And then it's always that question, when's the bloody bin man coming?
Yeah.
Because you get me, everything's full and full. But strange enough, we kind of work out, we always make it work by taking this out, crushing this down, and we tend to sort that bin out so it's not overflowing, because obviously, do you get what I mean? But we spend time to sort that shit out. We sort that rubbish out because we've got no choice. And it's actually exactly the same with like mental health, isn't it? It's okay. Sometimes you have to get that big cardboard box, take it at the end of the garden. Do you know what? Just burn it.
Yeah.
Just get it for good. And it's a terminology. I'm not actually that's good.
Yeah, it is. And as I said, it touched on the point you said earlier where, I've sort of, there are certain aspects of my day-to-days where I've just had to get on with it and sort of, live with it. And I think that's why I was so inclined to try and get involved with you guys, because like we said, MANUP is a term that a lot of people do possibly shy away from, and people might necessarily read it first time ago, or I don't know about that. That's quite an abrupt way of, trying to help men that suffer. But it's really important. I think it's good for people to try and challenge that straight away, because I think it might, and I hope it gets them in the mindset straight away to be like, oh, actually, do you know what? No, maybe I do need to start tackling this a bit more head on, and like you said, just deal with the issues that are coming in front of them. And sometimes it's not as easy as like you said. Sometimes it might be a matter of, oh, I don't want to go to this party, and it could be a phone call, and you literally just walk out your door and you go, and you might have the best night of your life, but that's a very, very minor and a very, very easy thing to deal with. There are some things that, like I've had, where it's years and years and years that have built up where I've not been able to deal with it, straight away. And I now know that I've got to deal with that over a space of time, because it's not going to be a quick fix.
Mm-hmm.
And this is why I think it is so important for people to realize on both sides, people that realize there's something going on and people that don't realize, because you are going to have to deal with it at some point regardless. Otherwise it will take over a massive portion of your life. And unfortunately it doesn't just affect you, it does actively affect everybody else around you as well that you're involved with. And that, you need to try and keep a community of people around you to try and keep you level headed on certain aspects of it. And you don't want to try and drive anybody out. It's very, very tough. It's a very, very tough thing to try and explain and try and describe. I'm trying to sort of look at it from both aspects, from sort of both points of view of people that, are trying to look in and sort of trying to look out as well.
It's a hard one, mate.
It is, yeah. Honestly, it's so tough. I've been asked many questions about it in the past, and like you said, when someone's asked you about what anxiety is, you, me, and about 14 other people might all describe it in completely different ways that all might come to the same sort of conclusion, but the way that everybody deals with things and sees things is completely different. Everybody's completely different. People that watch this or people that have been on calls with you beforehand, all the backgrounds, there might be some similarities between what I say and what other guys have said, but everybody's story is completely different and all individual and unique. So,
well, I can tell you straight away, because as you know, we always have like a couple of minutes conversation before, and I tend to always have a bit of a conversation afterwards. But literally, every single one have said Because I'll all say like, how did you step out? Or how did you brave up or man up and all this kind of
Yeah,
stuff?
yeah.
And then and there's always either in the videos or afterwards, they're like, well, actually, do you know, the one thing I regret is not doing it sooner.
Hmm.
Of not speaking about whatever sooner. It's just, and I'm a culprit. I still fall foul of it every now and again myself.
Yeah, it's one of those cliche things, isn't it? And this is where I might swivel a few heads. But it's just typical, and this might be the worst example that I could possibly give. But it's when somebody close to you or somebody that you know, and it could be a friend down the street, and something drastic happens to that family, and somebody does unfortunately take their life. And my issue is that a lot of people in this day and age, unfortunately, because we're in that sort of particular climate, a lot of people decide to take to social media to be like, oh, such and such has happened. I'm going to start taking my life more seriously, and this, that, and the other. I sit there and I read them, and it does annoy me. I like the aspect of people paying attention to it and acknowledging it, but at the same time, I absolutely hate it because I don't like people. I don't like the thought of someone sitting there in the mindset of going, right, okay, that's now happened. Now I need to start taking my life more seriously, and I need to start taking care of others around me and my mental
Yeah.
health. It shouldn't get to a point where people have to have something like that happen to them. Does that make sense?
Yeah,
It's quite difficult to
total
explain.
sense. I totally agree with you. Yeah.
And that is something that does frustrate me. Unfortunately, that's just social media, though, isn't it? That's a bigger minefield than any.
Well,
And I
it's
don't.
just that world of comparison and all of that, isn't it? It's a bloody nightmare. It really is. And that's so, but all we can do is just keep battling it and changing one mind at a time. And one day it's hopefully it'll just work. And like I said, I don't know if it was before or after or before we started recording or not. I, as well as the trustees, are gagging for the day where we could shut this
Mhm.
charity down because there is no need for it. I'd love it.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's my goal. Yeah, yeah. No, I'm well aware there's a BPD, and I'm well aware that probably won't happen in my lifetime. But all we can do is keep trying.
Yeah, and that's the important thing, isn't it? It's, as I said, I think a big part of it for you guys, obviously, is bringing that exposure to it and sort of making people more aware. And obviously, yeah, you're absolutely right. Obviously, your end goal is going to be to turn around and be like, no, this is no longer needed. And that is a very, very ambitious isn't the right word to use, but it is an ambitious goal. Because obviously it is something that is, I feel, actively growing, potentially worse in terms of not necessarily the people that suffer, but I think the people that don't speak out about it enough. I think that's becoming a bit of an issue. But I believe that with some of the way that things are going, and with higher, I hate to say it, but with higher profile people that are reaching out as well and that are sort of putting their names out there, I do think that is helping. Unfortunately, not to say that people don't listen to the likes of us, but I think people like Ben Chilwell, who actually came out, I believe, yesterday, and obviously everyone knows who Ben Chilwell is, an England footballer, but he's been actively talking about how he suffered recently, and I think it's important now that people like that are coming out, because I think that people are actually acknowledging it and going, again, like I said earlier, right, if someone like that can suffer, then potentially I can. So perhaps I need to start looking after myself better. Trying
Yeah.
to preempt it happening essentially, or try and stop it from happening full stop. So
Well, he's trying to nip it in the bud early.
yeah, absolutely. And sometimes it doesn't always happen. And I hope people realize that. And if people do watch this, and that people do realize that there are things that they've been potentially dealing with for a number of years that they might not necessarily put down to, like you said, mental health. um it's important for those people to turn around and go, right, I might have to potentially live with that for the rest of my life. Whatever it might be, I might have to get up every day and deal with some aspect of it, because either they've left it too long, it's built up, and there are some things, and definitely parts of my life, where I feel like it doesn't matter how much help I get or how much I try and do, I can't get rid of that now. That's become sort of an everyday part of my mind and sort of the way that my mindset works. But it's about how I deal with it now.
Yeah.
And again, I can't remember if this is before the call or why we started, but sometimes I could just wake up in the morning and immediately feel in a bad mood, or just think that I'm going to have an absolutely awful day for no reason at all. I might have slept 8.5 hours as well, and I might have got a great sleep, but immediately I've woken up and I'm like, no, do you know what? This day is it. It's awful. I don't want to be part of this at all. And again, it's up to me, and in the morning, and sort of how I deal with it and how I use my own coping mechanisms to think, right, I've got to snap myself out of this. Otherwise, it is literally going to be from the minute I wake up to the minute I try and go to sleep. So I'm just going to be thinking, it's a really, really dull day. It's really, really bad. Everything's negative. You know, I don't want to be around. It's you know, it's awful. But that's just about how I deal with it. You know, that's my importance, and you know, my daily battle is about me having to live with it. You know, not just to actively suffer, but it's something that does just become everyday life. So
I think some valid points, man, some good points. But anyway, you are one of the very few who's managed to slide through my 20 minutes.
I thought that was going to happen. To be honest,
No,
I did.
I don't know. I know we started a bit late, but it doesn't really matter. So well done to you, mate. Actually, because it's just I like these conversations because they're natural, and that's why I don't script them at all, because we can lead it however we want to lead it.
Yeah.
But just before, you've got 2 minutes, no more.
Mm-hmm.
If somebody's watching this video, doesn't matter the gender, like I know you've triggered it, doesn't really matter. If they can relate and think, oh bloody hell, that's me. What would you say for them to do?
Oh, that's a tough one. That is, quite. You're not wrong.
You've still only got 2 minutes.
Okay, so for me personally, I would say that if people are watching this and they do relate to anything that I'm particularly saying, I think it's very, very important for that person to take away from this and just take 2 minutes like this call to realize if there is a particular pattern forming within themselves that they believe is now becoming part of their everyday life. And you know, try and tackle it head on and sort of try and generate some urgency in your own head, no matter how hard it is, to try and go, right, okay, that is something that is happening most days or every day, and it is affecting people around me, it's affecting me, it's affecting work, whatever it might be. People need to realize now, and they need to come to terms with it very, very quickly. Yes, I know that's hard to do, but that's when you need to start reaching out to people and start speaking to people about it. Because that's the only way you're going to realize, you know, it might not necessarily be you concluding it to yourself. You might need to speak to somebody and they'll go, yeah, actually, do you know what? This is happening with you. And, you know, I've noticed it and such has noticed it. I think now it's important more than ever to start turning around and actually going, right, okay, that is an issue. I might need to seek some help, or I might need to start working on myself immediately, because that's when the snowballing effect does happen. And as you said, and we've said before, it can lead to other things and bigger things. And, you know, unfortunately, it happens very, very quickly. And it's very, very easy to get comfortable when you're in a bad mindset and to become lazy and not do things about it. And, you know, just deal with it and just think, oh yeah, do you know what? It'll pass tomorrow. It won't. Doesn't matter how much you think it will. It won't. You know, it's always going to happen. And until you actually realize it and tackle it head on, unfortunately, that's a nice way to put it, you know, or the blunt way to put it, so to speak. Yeah, you've just got to come to terms with it and realize it very, very quickly. And if you suspect it, jump on top of it.
That was a good call. Even though I give you 2 minutes, you had 2 minutes 42 seconds. You're good, man. You're good.
Honestly, I said I could write a novel. It's ridiculous.
Yeah. Let me hit the record button. Bear me 1 second, mate.